Hello and good evening and welcome to the Royal Corner with my special guest this evening, Christopher Bouzy. Mr. Christopher Bouzy, thank you so much for joining us in the Royal Corner this evening.
Oh, thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. Everyone who comes to the Royal Corner is usually greeted with my customary harps, and you are no exception, Mr. Bouzy. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed those. I'm very pleased to have you here in the Royal Corner, and I wanted to essentially talk about some of the work that you've been doing in relation to targeted campaigns of harassment and hate with your company, Bot Sentinel, because not a lot of people are familiar with you. I am, because of the work that you've done with the Harry and Meghan Netflix series. But if you could tell people a little bit about yourself and also the work that you're doing with Bot Sentinel and why it's important.
Sure. I launched Bot Sentinel in 2018, and the whole idea behind it came because of the 2016 election here in the United States, when we discovered that Russia was favoring one candidate over the other, and they were using mis and disinformation and fake accounts, whether they were automated or human-controlled accounts, to pretend as if they were American voters. So I thought it would be great to use technology to try to identify certain accounts to make users aware of what's happening on these platforms, specifically Twitter. So when I started doing the research, because I was really more or less focused on quote unquote bots, which are automated accounts. But when I began to do the research, I realized that many of these accounts were human controlled accounts. And, on the social media platforms, so many people were calling each other bots and trolls and things of that nature because they just didn't agree. So Bot Signal was developed to give folks sort of a quote unquote credit score for social media. The idea behind it is if you're behaving in disruptive and problematic, activities, which is, putting out mis and disinformation, targeting individuals, doing the stuff that many of these foreign, hostile foreign accounts were doing, our technology would be able to pick this up, and then we would be able to flag this stuff in real time. I launched it in 2018, and it just took off almost immediately because users wanted to be able to discern from folks that they can really interact with legitimate individuals and accounts that were nefarious or problematic.
I think I think that's
Yeah,
such an important exercise to undertake from any political perspective, because we in the UK, we had Brexit, and
right.
a lot of the conversation around Brexit was also about misinformation and the amplification of misinformation, to the extent where now many of the people who voted to leave cited that misinformation and that they felt misled. So I can see how something like Bot Sentinel would have a wider reach, other than just for users in America, presumably for their misinformation that they're getting, but also in relation to things in other parts of the world, like with what happened with Brexit over here.
And right, and exactly, and it did. Bot Sentinel is used globally. We have a lot of users from the UK. When it was developed, obviously I was thinking more or less about the United States at the time, but it quickly took off in other regions as well.
Mm,
But as the company matured, realized we had to do more than just provide technology. We also had to kind of report on what's happening on these platforms to give folks who are not using our technology updates and news on what's actually happening. And we
mm.
decided that we were going to publish reports on the activities that we were seeing. And so that's how the whole Harry and Meghan stuff came about, because there were folks that were reaching out to us and saying, hey, can you please look into this campaign, or what appears to be a campaign
Mm,
against the couple.
mm.
And eventually we did, and and that's how the report and ultimately the Netflix documentary came about.
But in terms of the Netflix documentary, I think when I was looking at it, you identified, I think, a very small number of accounts, which
Yes.
but the amplification reach of those accounts, once they were effectively retweeted by what would have been seen as reputable journalists for reputable papers and reputable news outlets, they were effectively promulgating false narratives and essentially creating a real climate of hatred towards Harry and Meghan. And I think your company and the work that you were doing helped to identify that with an evidence-based assessment, for want of a better word. You could say, here you go, this is what happened, these are how many people were reached, and this is the route that they took. And I think that was fundamental in terms of empowering people to feel safer online in a way.
Right. Oh, and you're absolutely right. It was fewer than 100 accounts, and they were able to pretty much influence approximately 17 million users.
That is
Um,
absolutely amazing and scary at the same time.
oh, absolutely. It does not take, there's a misconception that folks believe that it takes, a large number of accounts to do this, and it really does not. A small number of accounts can, manipulate, various platforms, especially Twitter. Um, so yeah, so when we published that report, it did garner a lot of attention because of what we exposed. And then we, published two other reports after that to highlight the individuals behind these campaigns. So yeah, it was quite scary to see, how these folks were attacking the couple and also how they were, monetizing it as well.
But also I think it demonstrates the way in which, for want of a better word, I call it the enmity business model, whereby you essentially, like you say, you monetize hatred and enmity, and that becomes the main currency for your particular social media or your media outlet. And that to me was clearly demonstrated by the work that Bot Sentinel did in terms of identifying that, showing the links between those accounts and or how those accounts were then being used in mainstream newspapers and then being effectively monetized through advertising.
Right, right. Um, you know, yeah, it at the end of the day, um, whether it's, and I know we'll get into it in a minute, whether it's Spot Signal, whether it's my new project, we as a society, we have to think long and hard about social media and how we are going to move forward in, I hate to say this, but policing, moderating these platforms, because they can be weaponized, they're dangerous, and they can be dangerous, I should say. And we need new laws and policies. We need new laws and policies to um, tackle these issues.
I think the question around regulation, for want of a better word, and it's being left almost to itself to the users in a particular way, because in a way, your new project, Spoutable, is, for want of a better word, trying to create a new village where you have a different set of rules and you have a different type of business model. So I think that the way in which it's going to develop, in many ways, it's part of it is already gone. Maybe I'm being slightly pessimistic because of the way in which companies and governments are very much involved in social media and the relationship and interdependency between those two. It's very much also demonstrated in terms of public opinion. But then your idea of moving completely away is also, it's not pessimistic. It's very optimistic, that one. It's hugely optimistic. But then I think to myself, you need that critical mass of people to come. So like any creative egg, it starts small until it evolves into something far more grand, essentially.
Right. We are just under a month old, and it takes time, but we do have, I haven't released the numbers yet, but we do have a significant number of users um, that have joined. We don't have an app yet, and that was by design. We wanted to start off with the web so we can, work on the platform, test, different things out to make sure everything was stable and secure before launching the app. But for a platform that is under a month old, and it does not have an app, because most people now want an app. They don't want to go to a website, even if it's going on their phone or going to it on their phone. We're doing really well, and and I'm not going to release the numbers yet. I said I will release them in March, but they're significant. So I am optimistic that when we do launch the app, that there are going to be a large number of individuals migrating over to our platform. People are tired of the toxicity. They're tired of the racism and the misogyny, and the whole entire platform was designed to give marginalized people, communities, a voice without fear of retribution or being attacked because of who they love or their skin color or their political leanings or any of that stuff. So yeah, it is, it is a new type of village, and we'll see how it goes.
I think that's really important because I think sometimes we call ourselves marginalized groups, but essentially we are the global majority now, and probably not probably, most definitely going into the future. Those groups are having greater and greater prominence, and your platform I see that as fertile soil for a complete sea change in terms of narrative formation, conversations around politics, because you're not going to be in a space where essentially you have dominance, white supremacy. I don't see that happening there. I see that as a place, like you say, for people who have marginalized lives in a particular way to become the global majority in terms of the conversation. And I think that's really quite unique and very exciting.
Oh, I'm excited. I'm excited more for, you know, my users, the people that are coming there who do want to see change. I'm also excited at the idea that, if people are coming to Spottable and they are not facing the type of stuff they're facing on other platforms, that the other platforms are going to be forced to follow our model. Because at the end of the day, if we become, a significant voice in this whole
Sorry,
uh,
when you become a significant
yeah,
voice,
you're
when?
right. You're right. When we become, you're
When?
absolutely right. When we become, a significant, player voice in this social media platform, whatever you want to call it, battle, whatever, that folks do look at what we're doing and say that, okay, you got to do better, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Twitter, whether it's, Instagram, you got to do better. If these guys can do it, you can do it as well. So that's the whole point behind this. The whole point is to show lawmakers, to show users, to show folks that are who are looking at all of this, like, hey, it does not have to be toxic.
No.
Look, one last thing. We have all this technology in the world in terms of, we have cameras, especially in the UK. You guys got a lot of cameras everywhere.
Please, I think we're one of the most surveyed cities in the whole of in whole of Europe. So yeah, it's in
Yeah,
probably the world after China, possibly.
probably after China.
Yeah.
But we still have crime.
Mm.
Unfortunately, we will always have folks that will try to test the rules and things like that.
Mm.
That's going to happen on Spottable as well. You're going to have folks that are going to try to create fake accounts. You're going to have folks that are going to try to test the rules and the policies and things like that. But it's up to the platform, and in this case, it's up to us to make sure that stuff like that does not get out of hand. That they're not millions of fake accounts, that maybe there's only a few dozen fake accounts at any time, or that there are not millions of users that are saying racist stuff or attacking women and things like that. that is just a small number that are constantly being suspended, and removed from the platform. So, that's what it comes down to. All the platforms have amazing policies. They just don't enforce them, and that's where we're trying to do something different.
I think that to me is quite an interesting area for me to just touch on, because I just wanted to check, how would you say that Spoutable is different from Telegram and Rumble? And I've used Telegram before, but I haven't used Rumble. But so maybe it's not a fair comparison. But in terms of my layperson's thinking, that I think I see those places as other places where people can communicate, post information, share ideas. So how would you say your platform is different from those?
Right. So with Spoutable, the main difference is safety and security.
Okay.
It was built with that in mind. And so what I mean by that, so first thing, we give our users, probably more tools than any other platform to protect themselves. So on Spoutable versus Twitter, you can remove toxic replies. You cannot do that with Twitter. You can with Spoutable. So if someone comes into your thread and says something that is just horrendous, you can remove that without waiting for a moderator. Now, of course, you could do this you could do this on other platforms, but for whatever reason, you can't on Twitter. And then our blocking features are second to none. And what I mean by that is, we took a lot of time, put a lot of time and effort into thinking of ways of trying to defeat these anti-abuse tools. So when someone blocks someone on our platform, they are blocked. You can't, try to find ways around it or trying to interact with other folks to then, attack you or whatever. Like you're blocked, you're blocked. And, and there are like so many other tools that we have just to prevent harassment. So that's the key part. Then diversity. The platform was developed in a way to give people, once again, marginalized communities a voice, to be able to communicate on a platform in a way that they're not used to being able to communicate. So yeah, we're not using, for example, for the feeds, we're not using algorithms to tell you what we think you should see. You're seeing your raw feed of the people that you follow. So, we're not forcing things down people's throat. They can come to the platform, follow who they want, and they see that information. And the engagement has been super high on the platform.
I think that's really important in terms of engagement, because one of the things that I wanted to pick up with you is that I received, because I get DMs sometimes from other people who want to share information with me. I received some DMs in relation to quite a lot of negative comments and active, what I would call campaigning and smearing of yourself and also of Spoutable. And firstly, I thought to myself, oh, these are just, the usual sort of, what can I call them, haters who just want to come in and just want to, they see something that's new and creative and they're not part of it, so they want to squash it. So I didn't pay it much attention in a particular way. And then later on, when I was checking your feed, I saw that there was a particular account holder who was being openly gleeful almost as the campaign not only was gaining momentum, but it appeared to have you losing followers. And I thought to myself, what is all of this about? And I just wondered if you could provide us with some context about that, and also maybe place it in a wider context of, here is a person doing his thing, and you got others, trying to tear down his castle. That's my thinking.
Right. Well, that would be an extremely long conversation, but I will say this. Because of the work that I do with Bot Sentinel and exposing these hate campaigns, whether it was with Harry and Meghan, whether it was with VP Harris here in the United States, where accounts were targeting her, or Amber Heard, or just a number of individuals and communities and things like that, where we have published these reports. Over time, there are just folks who don't like you because of the work that you do. So that's the first part. The second part is, to be frank, look, there are few alternatives to Twitter right now that are considered to be viable. viable alternatives. And Spoutable is one of the only alternatives, obviously owned by a Black person, myself, but also trying to give people voices that traditionally don't have voices. Twitter is a platform that has increasingly become, racist. You have a lot of misogyny on the platform, anti-Semitism, and things of that nature. If a large number of folks migrated off of Twitter onto a platform they can't go to because they know they will be suspended, they can no longer harass their victims. They can no longer target them because targeting them on one platform, Twitter, saying something mean about them, it's not going to be seen if they're on Spoutable. So there are folks that are actively trying to dissuade people from joining Spoutable and using all types of mis and disinformation to accomplish that. But thankfully, it's not working. And thankfully, there are a lot of other folks who are looking at this and seeing what's happening, and they have spoken out in defense of the platform. And just lastly, to your last question, yeah, there was an individual who was, and I guess you could say still is, actively trying to take the platform down and spreading mis and disinformation about it, and was extremely happy when I was losing followers on Twitter because of the smear campaign. But you have to have thick skin, and you have to learn sometimes to ignore the noise and focus on the work. So I'm just going to let the platform speak for itself. And when people go to spoutable.com and they try it for themselves, I think at the end of the day, the platform, will win, and we will get the last laugh.
I think one of the things that I think is important in terms of the reason why I think you were essentially targeted in this way is because if you think about technology and who occupies that space and the value and importance of that space, you being there as an African American, as a person who probably, I don't suggest I know what your story is in terms of your journey to manhood, but if I think of the broader experience of people of color, it's not always it's always the same in a particular way. We have to work 10 times harder, and you being there is such a important thing for people to see. And I think that's part of the reason why you're getting this backlash, because there were I saw other people wanting to sue you and all this business. And I thought to myself, this guy's doing his work. He's just come into the public eye with the work that he's doing with Harry and Meghan. And you can just see straight away, it's almost like people were just attaching themselves to you and pecking away so they could say, look, you know what, I'm doing this to Chris Bouzy, and, I can bring him to a particular place. And I saw it within that context. I thought, they're just trying to bring down another brother who's really doing really well. And they're afraid of the success that you could achieve. I think that's really huge, because if you think about the business model that a lot of people who are big on Twitter, you're basically saying it's got nothing necessarily to do with them being or value. It's just that they got amplification. Without amplification, they're basically less than mediocre. And your work in Spoutable is exposing that. And I think that's a threat to a lot of people, in my humble opinion.
Oh, no, absolutely. And I couldn't say it better myself.
I think he is.
And that's what it boils down to. It boils down to exactly that. And so, I knew going into this, launching this platform, that this would happen. Didn't think it would happen so quickly, but I also believe that the reason why is a lot of folks didn't think we could do it. They didn't think that we could launch it in the time frame that we said we were going to launch it. We launched it within 3 months. I think now that they see so many prominent people that are coming over to the platform, we have, a growing number of American politicians and journalists coming over, and we have some folks from the UK as well. Obviously,
I will be joining. I can confess to those who are listening, I have not yet joined the community, but when I do, it will be with fanfare. In fact, you might even hear this. Yeah, you said you got a couple people coming from the UK and London.
Yeah, we have a significant. If I'm not mistaken, I think the UK is number three in
Oh,
terms of
fantastic.
yeah. Oh yeah, oh yeah. We have a significant number of folks coming out of the UK. So yeah, I'm extremely optimistic about the future of the project. I like the way things are going. We have a growing number of users each day. And it's, I encourage people to come and check it out. And when they see how warm and welcoming it is compared to the other platforms,
Mm.
I think it's going to change the landscape of social media.
Well, one of the things that I found when I looked at some of other social media platforms, I haven't tried Rumble, but I've used Telegram. I find sometimes it's a very masculine space. It's all, quite a lot of sternum beating. And I'm thinking that because Spoutable has a different flavor, that's the flavor I get. I don't get the impression that it's a lot of that. I think it's far more a place where, okay, I'm going to just say, I think women and people of color are just going to they're just going to feel nicer in it, I think, personally.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where you just have to experience it.
Yeah.
Me talking about it and telling your listeners about it. It's one of those things you have to experience it for
Mm.
yourself. So I just encourage everyone to take a look and they can be the judge.
So in terms of, you said you're going to release some figures in March. So
Hmm.
that we've got that to look forward to. Also,
Hmm.
now, before we started the interview, you also explained to me that there might be also some social audio features due to
Hmm.
be launched at some point, which is essentially, I do Twitter Spaces, and there will be something similar on Spoutable. So could you just elaborate about that?
Yeah, absolutely. We're calling them pods, and you are correct. It will be the equivalent to spaces. We do believe that audio, social interactions, and things like that. People, creating their pods and being able to discuss things like this with their audience is extremely important. So when we launch the app in March, soon to follow will be the pods. And we're hoping that once we launch that the holdouts on Twitter will come over because one of the main things is there are a lot of people who utilize Twitter Spaces, and they want to be able to do that on our platform. So yes, we're definitely doing it. It will be available hopefully at the end of March, but the app will be available in March.
Yeah, and I also noticed that you have on your Twitter feed, is it spoutable.com vote vets? Just tell me a little bit about that. Is that to do with American veterans and supporting them?
Oh, absolutely. They created an account, and within actually less than 24 hours, they got over 5,000 followers.
Oh,
Um, and so Vote Vets, they're an organization that support veterans who are running for office.
all
Uh,
right.
yeah, so they joined Spoutable because they want to be part of this growing community, and they like what we're doing. They appreciate our values
Mm.
and thought that this would be a platform great to promote their messaging. I'm excited to have them on. But like I said, at the end of the day, we're a new platform, and
Yeah.
to see this type of activity on a platform like that's not even a month old, it's amazing.
One of the things that I follow on Twitter quite a lot, and I'm quite interested in cryptocurrencies, and I know Twitter Spaces utilizes a lot of opportunities for NFTs, cryptocurrencies, conversations about new types of money and finance. And I'm just wondering, what's Spoutable's ambition in that space? Because I think Twitter has become quite unique in a particular way for that kind of discourse. Do you see something like that hopefully developing on Spoutable?
Yeah, sure. I mean, at the end of the day, look, we are trying to, I don't want to say trying to be the next Twitter. I don't want to say that.
Mm.
But we're trying to create an environment where all these different discussions are happening on the platform. So it's not just about politics. It's not just about social, issues. It's about, a lot of different things. If you're into cats, or whatever.
I'm actually into cats. I also like fish. I've got a couple of fish.
Right. So so whether it's finance, politics, whatever it is you're into, you should be able to find those conversations on the platform. So like I said, we are extremely excited about all of this.
Well, I just wanted to say, I'm conscious that you are exceptionally busy, especially with your new project. And I know you've given me your time because you are actually dialing in from abroad. So I really appreciate that. And I don't want to keep you too long, but I would like to say thank you so much for, one, allowing me to speak with you and also to share our conversation in the Royal Corner, and also to thank you for your creativity, because I think creativity is a really important skill, and sometimes we don't follow it, but when you lean into it, you get fabulous eggs which turn into beautiful gardens, acorns which flower. So thank you for Spoutable, and thank you for the work that you're doing, especially on addressing misinformation and online harassment.
Thank you for that, and thank you for inviting me on and to give me the opportunity to talk about it. I really appreciate that, and thank you.
Well, I do hope that you have an opportunity to come back, and I know we do have a date a little later in the year, but I'll be keeping that under my hat until we have absolute confirmation. Christopher Bouzy, thank you so much for joining me in the Royal Corner.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Thank you. And I'm just going to end with the customary harps, because Mr. Bouzy, you absolutely deserve them. Thank you so much, Christopher.
Thank you.